Central Planning Committee. This evening's meeting is held in public to ensure that all those involved or interested in the planning applications can see and hear how the decisions are made. It's important that the speakers are able to present their information without interruption, and that council members of the committee are able to hear and consider the material presented. Only those people who have been notified are able to speak. I would ask everyone else to remain quiet, not to interrupt the meeting, and to allow the members to make their decisions. I remind everyone that council meetings can be photographed or recorded. I ask all participants to recognise the importance of the planning process, and please will everyone silence or turn off their mobile phones. Okay. Item 1 of the agenda is apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Jackie Loveridge and Councillor Colin Sahita is a substitute.
Yeah, Jackie Loveridge is poorly. Okay. Item 2, declarations of interest. Ian Fletcher.
Yes, Chairman. Right. All 5 applications on tonight's meeting come within the parish of St George's and Prisley, of which I am a member. The Woodhouse Farm and Highgrove Meadows was discussed and a recommendation came from the parish council to the committee, but I took no part in those discussions and did not vote. However, the Youth Centre Gower Street, the parish council had a discussion which I took part of, but then decided to make no recommendation to the planning authority. I made some, based on the original application that came before us, I examined it and made a few comments and suggestions which are recorded on the site. Therefore, I have come to the conclusion it could be considered that I've already made up my mind about this application. Therefore, I will withdraw from the meeting whilst this application takes place.
That's the Gower.
The Gower one, yes.
Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? No? Item 3 on the agenda, the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there true and correct record?
Yeah.
Will Agreed or shown? Right, thank you.
I abstain, Chairman, because I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, Ian. Right. Item 4, deferred / withdrawn applications.
There are none, Chair.
There aren't any. Item 5, site visits.
There are none proposed, Chair.
None proposed. Thank the Lord for that. Item 6, the planning application for determination. Well, because of the size of the applications and the number of speakers, I'm going to take the Gower first. That's items 6.3 and 6.4. I'll give Ian time to leave the meeting. I don't think the bar's open, Ian.
Don't drink in the meeting, Chairman.
I know, I took the tea bar.
It's going to the gym downstairs, what are you talking about?
No, you.
Go for a swim.
You might have to do that as well. Okay, Ian.
As long as you don't forget, I'll be down.
We'll send somebody for you. Okay.
Be down that end where the chairs are.
We'll send somebody for you, don't worry.
Thank you, Chairman. See you later.
See you. Right. I intend to take items 6.3 and 6.4 together because they're the same building. So we'll have one debate, but there will be 2 votes at the end because there are 2 applications. One's for listed building applications. So we'll have one debate, we'll have 2 votes. Okay. Andy.
Thank you, Chair. So the full and listed building consent seek permission for the renovation of the northern wing and central entrance area to provide community facilities, the conversion of the southern wing to provide 3 residential units, and the erection of 10 dwellings within the grounds. The proposal secures funds to relocate the existing play area to the site of the former Women's Institute building on the end of Albion Street, but does not involve the replacement of the community gardens / allotments. Applications to demolish the Gower and replace with a food store and houses were withdrawn in 2014, shortly after the Gower was designated as a Grade 2 listed building. Since then, the southern wing has been unsafe for use, and since 2020, the northern wing has been also rendered unsafe. A number of additional representations have been received after the publication of the committee report commenting on the amended plans. The comments question the sustainability of contributing to primary schools within 2 kilometres of the Gower, given the number of them, and the sustainability of contributing towards Telford Langley, given its location in Dorley. In addition, the comments raise issues with the facilities listed in the committee report as forming part of the asset of community value. These will be addressed in further detail after the public speakers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got public speakers, Mr. Andy Bunn. No? Mr. A. Gort then, member of the public. Come on, Mr. Gort. Sit down, it's easier. You've got 3 minutes.
Right, thank you.
When you start, you've got 3 minutes. Okay.
Okay. Hello, my name is Alan Gort. I am owner and I've lived next to the house that shares the boundary with the Gower. I wanted to speak as a person, not just a reference on this planning document. My wife and I have lived at our home in Albion Street, St George's, for the past 23 years, where we raised our family who attended the local schools. I'm a retired pensioner, an ordinary working man who likes to think I am able to distinguish right from wrong. Being next door to the Gower has always played a part in my life. I have been involved in one way or another for a long time, either acting as security or more recently on the Gowder Heritage Group, a group of local residents who developed a plan for the building and play area to be restored and used for the benefit of the community. A plan the councillors at first were not part of, but who later became involved. Our Gower Heritage Plan was significantly different to those being proposed in the planning application. The officer who prepared the report present what he calls a simple matter, but isn't. The changes will impact on myself and my home insignificantly, not simply. Since the parish council has decided to remove any discussions that involve the established Gower Heritage Group to pursue their own ends as borough councillors, with each new day I become more and more fearful for my future. What the office labels enhanced public health and welfare, the development I will bring, I do not understand by what method he arrives at conclusion. I ask the planning committee to reject this planning application. Part of the Telford Wrekin Statement of Community Involvement, dated 17th of the 3rd, 21, in 1.1 of that report, advises residents that our community council is keen to involve local people, since the decisions made at planning have potential to impact on local people and the places local people live and work. Nothing is truer statement that anything applying this to the Gower, and nothing is further from truth in terms of the involvement of local people who have spent hundreds of volunteer hours on the Gower, only to be ignored. I am not just a local people, I am the closest neighbour to the Gower, and any development, especially building houses, will negatively impact on myself. To remove a community part area and replace it with 10 dwellings and associated parking, as well as 3 dwellings in the building overnight, brings up to 33 additional people. The officer sees it as purely measuring sunlight or view or replacing windows. The officer describes the location as a mix of semi and detached houses. This may be true for the whole of St George's, but Albion Street and where the Gower sits is a mixture of long row of terraces, flats, a couple of shops and a commercial area that is up for sale. Do I stop?
Carry on.
Oh. For sale. 33 additional people in a spot that is already overcrowded. The additional vehicles and proximity to our environment and normal day-to-day living of people. An additional 33 people on that spot is wrong. In addition to the removal of a play area that has already had thousands of pounds spent on it in equipment and been a host to many local activities. The policy says public consultation should involve people with different needs. Many in that area are elderly and retired. Others are on low income, and others younger people with children, disability issues visible in St George's, as are BAME requirements. The Gower, as it is hosted for the whole range of people who participated. This application is not sought to seek the different group views. The policy has been ignored. It has not ensured the involvement of the public appropriate to the scale and nature of the council's plans. The impact of 13 new properties in an area already overcrowded, where school places are limited and it is impossible to get a GP face-to-face appointment. No consideration other than a monetary value has been placed on this. But to ordinary people recovering from an 18-month pandemic, it all matters. The funding and development strategy of the Gower Heritage Group took into account all these considerations and planned for a future of unity. Much in the officer's supporting statement is misleading about the Gower, the location and the consultation. At 2.5, the officer fails to mention that it was the council who closed the play area facility in preparation of this plan. Prior to that, the play area was used daily by children and adults. There are significant videos of the events that took place. 3.5 says the revised plan will have a greater flexibility of use and more maintainability. I just ask how does providing half the space for the community provide a greater flexibility? It reduces significantly the activities that can take place. The kitchen area is limited, so it can only use would be making refreshments, whereas it was appreciated to have a proper kitchen that could provide food similar to the Donington hub. The revised plan limits the range of, I've just got a short bit left now, if you'd let me, opportunities for people do not enhance them. Maintenance of the building is however the same how it is split up. In 8.2, the scheme is said to provide a community hub for education and has placed a monetary award on this. I hope the committee agree. Education is just what is taught in school. Is not just what is taught in schools. The Gower provides a site for education throughout play outside and for older and younger people to enhance their experiences, whatever their age. Education includes socialising, sharing, activities and spaces. This application misses out on all those. The revised planning applicant takes away from the people in St George's its heritage, its future. This site is not to building an additional 13 dwellings on with all the added toxicity that it brings. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I don't normally allow extra time to speak, but you represented quite a good group.
Thank you.
Thank you. Andy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, in addition to Mr. Gout, it's recognised that there have been several other interested parties who wish to speak. However, in accordance with the Council's adopted public speaking policy, they've been unable to do so. Specifically, the Gower Heritage Enterprise Foundation, or GEF, have objected to the scheme on the following grounds as summarised. The Gower would be best suited and more important to St George's as a community facility without housing. The social and economic benefits would also reduce traffic, and the alternative scheme proposed by GEF would provide a fully fitted play park and outdoor space. The building and land was given to St George's for the good of the community. Thousands of hours have been given by the community to rebuild the play park, make over the gardens and use the area to bring the community together for important well-being. The area needs a community centre and not more housing. In addition to GEF, St George's Community Group have also objected. Some of their objections replicate those of the Enterprise Foundation, but have also objected in relation to Telford Wrekin Council's Sustainable Climate Change Action Plan pledges are being ignored in relation to the new housing. Community open spaces are to be demolished, and potential spaces yet to be achieved by GEF within the Sustainable Business Plan are not possible. Sorry, not able to be delivered. The community have been excluded from basic planning engagement, with key stakeholders not being invited to parish council meetings. Further comments from the St George's Community Group have been reported in my introduction. They related to the sustainability of the school places. The final member of the public who wished to speak was Mr Edwards, who objected on the grounds that the council should listen to and support the views of local residents and use the building for community purposes. With further background, the Gower was constructed in 1873 as a cottage hospital. It operated as a school until 1961 and as a youth club until 2006. An application to convert the Gower to 7 units and build 6 dwellings in the grounds was permitted in 2011, which expired in 2014. The northern wing, the entrance area, the equipped play area, the grassed area, which includes the community allotments, community gardens, fairy gardening, and the verge areas, including the, well, previously citing the apple trees, as viewed on site by members this afternoon, are designated as assets of community value. These are shown on plans 1 and 2 on the screen. So many people know it well, but the area is hatched red. That's the northern section of the building, and then the bit at the back of that is the community allotments and the play area and the verges. The building is currently disused, but has a lawful use as a community hall. The site accommodates an external play area that was open from 2018 until 2021. There are no protected trees within or adjacent to the site. In terms of the scheme, the officer report outlines that the standalone restoration to community use is not viable, with estimated costs in excess of £2 million. Even with the high value residential use, the scheme relies on a £650,000 capital grant. In respect to the asset of community value designation, it is concluded that on balance, and taking into account the loss of the external areas, as shown on plans 1 and 2, the proposal will still further the social well-being and social interests of the local community. This is through the renovation of the northern wing and the entrance area, and the relocation of the play area. The loss in square meterage of community space through the residential conversion is considered to be outweighed by the significant improvement in the quality of the renovated community space. In respect of the impact on the designated heritage asset, the statutory test is to ensure that the development has special regard to the desirability of preserving the listed building and its setting. The Council's Built Heritage expert has advised that the revised plans, which omit the proposed central terrace of 4 units, reduce the degree of harm, and that the principle of the conversion works are fully supported. The harm from the new build has been minimised through design and is an absolute minimum development required to enable the restoration and continued maintenance of the community facility. The proposal therefore represents in heritage terms the optimum viable use. The proposal has demonstrated that it won't have an unacceptable impact on amenities of neighbouring properties, and there's no objections from technical consultees. Accordingly, following the planning balance undertaken in accordance with the required presumption in favour of preservation, officer recommendation is for approval for both the full and listed building applications. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andy. Open for the committee now to discuss, but Janice, I have to say you can't vote. I'll let you make contributions because you're at the site meeting, but you can't vote. You didn't do it at the start.
Sorry for being late.
It's okay.
It's late in the traffic.
Right, who wants to go first? It's we're all the site this afternoon.
Go on then, I'll go.
Yeah, go on then.
Councillor Dugmore.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I was glad I went on the site visit because, like many people, I've driven past, gone past the Gower for a very long, sort of for many years, and it's been very sad to see the building fall into such a state. And when we went inside, it was it's a lot worse inside than it was outside, to be honest, and it's bad enough outside. I mean, the building really is in a quite a parlous state, and over the years there's been quite there's vandalism of neglect was the phrase that sprang to mind, really. I mean, if nothing's done soon, well then the building isn't going to be able to be saved. I don't think so. I'm not an expert, but it looked in. I've seen some bad buildings in my time, and so we are running out of time to actually do something with the building. Now, I accept that the costs are going to be enormous to actually to save the building, and hence the reason for the housing on site, to try and help mitigate those costs. And as we've heard, it's still going to cost another what was it, 650,000 or something to actually bring it into to use. But having said that, if you didn't have the housing, well then perhaps it wouldn't cost quite that much. I do have some concerns over the proposals. I mean, the thing is that it's great to welcome 50,000 contribution for play equipment for new play area, but the new play area is planned 3/4 of a mile away. Now then, so the kids who would use the play area at the Gower, well, it's a bit of a schlep to go all the way 3/4 of a mile away. So really, there's going to be a loss of play area in that part of St George's, and I would have thought that there might be somewhere nearer that could accept that play equipment. The design of the I quite like the design of the houses that are proposed, because it does fit in very well with the Gower, and as I said on the site visit, it looks almost ecclesiastical actually, and I do like them. However, I do have concerns, because the two projecting the new blocks, they're very, very close to the boundary. I mean, 2 meters is really, really close, and with the height of them as well, I do think that it would have been more acceptable and have a less of an impact on neighbouring properties if instead of there were 5 houses there was only 4 houses, because that would actually give a bit of clearance between. And also I accept that the design itself, I mean, if you look at it, and I did point this out at the site visit, the dwellings actually in the Gower itself, 1, 2 and 3, because you've got to save the facade, there are no doors on the frontage for dwellings 1, 2 and 3. So their front doors are at the back, yet their parking spaces are at the front. And so from a practical point of view, it's a hell of a bloody walk to come out of dwelling 1 and have to walk all the way around the building, if you've forgotten your car keys or something like that, or you've got heavy shopping and that type of thing. So I think there could have been a bit more thought put into the design there, and so I think really that sort of I can, well, I mean, I'm not sure what the brief was to the architects, but I think that the whole design should be reviewed. I think that the height of the new blocks is too high, and obviously development of low-rise or bungalows or something would have been far better. I think a play area could have been incorporated into the design, which would have would have helped to mitigate some of the concerns. And like I say, there's the money that's available could be put to better use. So, as I say, the main building itself does need something doing with it fairly quickly. But I'm not sure that I have concerns about this being the right way to do it. And as I say, the impact. I know that there's there's slopes and everything, and that the neighbouring properties are higher up, but even so, you've still got the high new buildings, and to know that the gables have been played around with, but they are very, very close. They are too close to neighbouring properties.
Thank you, Nigel. Anybody else? Councillor Court.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I know the place well. You know, I've been driving past it for the last 40 years and up and down on it. And it is I have a thing about the old beautiful buildings, you know, call me romantic at heart. And in its heydays, when it was built in 1876 or for the next 100 years or so, it must have been a very beautiful building actually. And you know, red brick, grade 2, used as a hospital, school, community use, and so on and so forth. And eventually for the last 20 years or 10 years, it just started to go down and down. And as the old saying goes, you know, all good things must come to an end, and so on. And I understand Mr. Gaunt's and the rest of the neighbours who live there, that they have this perhaps a sentimental attachment to that building. So would I, if I sort of lived there. And like I said, you know, it must have been a great, good building, beautiful building when it was lived. But in today's time, everything is measured by the economics. Everything is measured by the pounds and the coin and the pennies and so on. And I was surprised to read actually in 835, the viability appraisal, as the officers have pointed out, that even after building these 10 houses and so on and so forth, council still has to put in £650,000 with, you know, the funding gap from the capital programme. You know, and what I would like to know is if we were to, the council were to, how shall I put it, refurbish it and you know, make it as good as used to be, you know, all those years ago for the community use. Has a council ever thought about, is it going to be millions of pounds or 1 million or 2? Have you ever thought about that, how much it would cost? I mean, still we have to put in a 650 with the 10 houses and the 3 community room uses and so on. Has the council ever thought, you know, what kind of a money we have to put in order to bring it to its heydays, you know, when it was all well used and so on? It's just something, like I said, everything is measured by pounds and coins these days, and we are here as a councillors, all 54 of us, to ensure that you know, the taxpayers get their value for money. And I remember it 10 years ago or 8 years ago when there was an issue with a Clifton cinema, and the people, I was a leader then, and the people used to say, well, come on, it's only £500,000 and so on. And then the officers used to say, well, if you put £500,000 in, then it has to be refurbished, has to be this and that, and then, you know, it's a taxpayer's money. And I felt responsible, and I still feel responsible for the taxpayer's money. Is it value for money? So have you got any idea, Andy, you know, if he was to, how much will it cost us? $1 million or 2 or what?
Yeah, of course, Councillor. The cost of converting the northern wing as proposed in this scheme is £1.35 million. Its value at the end of that is £275,000, so it's unviable by more than £1 million. I think members saw on site this afternoon that the southern wing is in a far poorer state than the northern wing. The floor's been taken up, so I think it's fair to assume that the cost to convert the whole building back to community use would be between £2 and £2.25 million. £2 to £2.5 million.
£2.5 million pounds, like on it, and the parish is silent on it. They're not prepared to do anything at all, or to dig in, you know, put their hands in their pocket or something. They're not going to do anything.
So the scheme with the with the 10 residential units, there's a development cost of around £4.5 million. As you said, Councillor Sahota, it's even with the TWC grant of 650,000, the scheme is still just marginally unviable. So there's the council need to prop it up by a little bit more. And if that was a private developer doing it, they wouldn't do it because it's a loss.
Okay, just one more point, Mr. Chairman. Has the council exhausted all the other avenues of, the pots of money which could be available, maybe one of the government ones, or a government, or the lotteries, or Heritage Fund, or England, this and that, and so on? Has the government, the council looked into it? All the avenues, all the possibilities that there is. Nothing can be done to raise 2.5 for the local communities.
I think the Gower Heritage Enterprise Foundation have been trying to secure money. Obviously, it's a Telford and Wrekin Council owned building, but my only assumption is that the level of funding required to renovate it hasn't been reached. Otherwise, I presume an offer would have been put forward, to do so, and that's the only answer I can provide, really.
Yeah. Okay, then I'll leave it there for the time being, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, guys.
I know I can't vote, and I'm very sad about that, and I do apologise repeatedly. I did go to visit the site today, and I must say I brought a tear to my eye, because I used to take children there many years ago to the youth clubs they used to have there, and I thought it was an amazing building. All I'm going to say is something needs doing, and it needs doing now, and we can't go on like we are, waiting for some decision or for these several £1 million to arrive, because I just personally don't think it's going to happen, and something needs to be done with that building now.
Thank you, Janice. Kelly?
I mean, just to say, I absolutely get and empathise with people who have history and memories and, feel the sentiment towards that. There's areas that I grew up in that have been developed and changed that you struggle with when it first happens. And at the school I went to has been knocked down because I feel quite old. But I mean, I think what we have to consider is sustainability in creating spaces for the generations in the future. And what we have isn't sustainable for the future, and it's not what's happening now, or what's happened. We have to think about what our children and our generations moving forward will have left, and at some point someone has to make a decision to make that change so that our children have a place where they can make memories and they can move forward. So I think we need to consider that as well, as difficult as it is.
Okay, anybody else? Peter?
Yeah, like everybody else today, we got inside and had a look, and it is very sad to see a building that's in such a poor state. Something has to be done with it, whatever happens. The same goes with the outer part of it as well. It needs something doing that will improve it for the actual people of the area. The main question I've got really is, first of all, we're given this application to make a decision on, and we're given the information, and we go along and see it, and we'll make a judgment on it. But I also hear about the Heritage Group and others that have got an interest in this. Is there a viable plan B on the table at the moment from anyone else at all? That's the main question, because I want to know that if we were to go ahead with this, are we squashing something that might have been better? Only I don't know, because I haven't been given it, so I wouldn't know. One comment I would make, I think it's extremely naughty of New Place to be advertising something that hasn't had permission yet. I was a bit surprised by that. We should really wait until a decision is made on something before we try and offer it to the public. Anyway, is there a viable plan B?
Yes.
Well, we haven't had any viability appraisals or financial plans submitted with the planning application. What we've had is documents stating what the use would be, but that's not been supported by any financial information.
Right. Okay, that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? Graham? No. Well, I was on the thing this afternoon. I was quite upset by the state of the inside of the building. It's far worse than I had been told, particularly on the southern wing. And in the northern wing, they're going to, which is going to be the community centre if we goes through, they're going to have to lift the floor to make certain that the joists underneath aren't going rotten. Because there's some concern there, and they said they're going to put wooden floorboards back. Now, they were laid down in the 1800s originally, 1875. So I think we need to do something with the building. We need to do something with the decrepit site. It's an eyesore in St George's, and it really needs looking at. And something needs to be done now. But it's up to the committee. Any more contributions? Coldip.
Further down the hill, there is a Wesley church, and I know the people who developed it, because these buildings, the old, they just keep the shell and they go in, and it cost a great deal of money in there to renovate and have apartments or blocks or whatever it is. And that Wesley house, or the church, used to be, and it was done by my relatives, and it cost him a hell of a lot, because it was really cheaper for him to knock it down and to rebuild it. So it does cost lots of money. We saw the shell inside there. It's some of this, the floors was all down, and some of the the walls were sort of not looking healthy. So I'm afraid, I all sympathy with the locals, but I'm afraid these days it's all pounds and pennies and economics, and I with a great reluctance, I'm afraid, with apologies to the local community, I have to let it go, and I have to go along with this plan, since there is no other alternative.
Shame on our Labour councillors.
There is another plan, but you're not asking the right questions. No. Sorry.
No, they covered it up.
Talk out of ignorance.
No, it's true. It's true.
We haven't had a right to speak at all.
No,
shame on our Labour councillors.
Out the window.
We're meant to represent the ordinary people.
Nobody's talked to the Gower group about their plan.
There's a lot of hours and a lot of years going.
Will somebody move
Sorry, you need to.
the recommendation at 10.1 on page 60? That's the full application, yeah. That's for this application, yeah. Okay? Moved it, seconded. All those in favour of the recommendation?
All the conditions attached to it.
All the conditions are there, yes. Well, that goes for part and parcel of it. Okay? All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Those against? Abstain? Oh, one against. Right.
Then the listed building.
I know it's alternative. Right. All right.
We get our council tax back when we pay for it.
On page 87, which is the listed building application, we had the debates, the listed building. Now, on paragraph 2, paragraph 2.1 is the recommendation there. But can I suggest a recommendation alteration on the consent on paragraph A? We do need, in fact, this brickwork repointing. We need to make certain that the foundation stone is recut, the lettering is recut, and that ought to be a condition. Okay. So the listed building application is before you. Can we move it? Yeah. So with that, what I've just suggested, can we agree the recommendation then? Those in favour? Any against? Nigel, you abstaining? Yeah. Thank you. Right, can somebody go and get Ian back, please?
For the future, obviously, we've just heard people there say that they're not allowed to speak, and I find that odd, for one thing. And I know you can't suddenly decide on the night to speak, but can we make sure that whenever anything like this comes forward again, that everyone's been given the opportunity to speak? Because there are people talking, and I've seen it certainly on social media, saying we're not allowed to, and I know that isn't true. So can there be more clarity so people can speak? Because quite honestly, I find it offensive for people to leave here and accuse us of corruption. Absolutely wrong. You know, give us the right information and we know where we are. But it puts us in an awful position, because I'm sure there'll be an awful lot of people. I mean, they probably think these are full of tenants, you know. It's embarrassing, and we shouldn't be accused of corruption. We're trying to do a job here, and there's nobody on this.
Councillor Scott, can you stop your political rant for a minute?
It's not a political rant,
and let the proper officer reply. You're addressing the wrong team.
Yeah, okay, but it's not a political rant.
Councillor Scott, if I can come back in terms of just addressing.
Yes, you may. Sorry,
public speaking. So this council has adopted public speaking process and policy, and it's very well published on our website. It's on the information that we even provide in our consultation letters about how to access that. It also explains that that's opened up on the date that the agenda is published. You can't register beforehand because there's lots of interested parties all the time that's coming forward, but it is very clear to say who is allowed to speak. There is a slot for the ward member, a slot for the parish council, a slot for an interested member of the public, and a slot for the applicant. These are limited to 3-minute slots each. With the interests of the public, there's obviously a lot of public that's involved with applications. There is only an opportunity for one party, and that's based on the first come, first served. And that was offered to the first person. Anybody else that's registered, and there were certainly 5 on this application that tried to register, they were unable to, it has to go to that first person. That policy is clear, it is on the website, it is published, and it is adopted, I'm sure, by full council, not cabinet, it is a full council item. We have to abide by that regulatory process. I expect that if there is a review, we can look at that further, but that can be led if there's any further comments in terms of how the public or the members feel about it. But it is a clear regulatory process which we must adhere to.
I understand that, yeah. I just think that it obviously isn't clear to the public what they can and can't do, because there's a lot of people who are complaining they weren't allowed to. And I'm not saying you're wrong, because you're not. But we need to be a bit more clear so that people can't accuse us of all and sundry, which is very, very worrying. I'll shut up now, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on then. Now Councillor Fletcher is returned to the table. We turn to page 13, agenda item 6A, which is the Woodhouse Farm, Priorsley.
Creation of 21 dwellings, including the renovation and conversion of the existing Grade 2 listed farmhouse into 3 units and the conversion of retained barn into 2 units. The 3.05 hectare site is located off Woodhouse Lane in the area of Priorsley, close to the junction with Castle Farm Way. Proposal includes a mix of 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroom units at a density of 11.1 units per hectare. 5 of these units will be for affordable housing. This application is subject to financial contributions towards play and open space and primary and secondary school education works within the locality development. Both the full and LBC applications are recommended for approval. The speakers on this one, Chair, I'll leave it back to you.
I should have said at the start of this one, it again is a listed building, so we'll take the 2 reports together and have 2 votes at the end. So one debate and 2 votes. Okay. Again, this is a listed building which is in a poor state of repair. Okay. Who wants to go first?
You've got speakers, Chair. So.
Oh, sorry. Thanks for reminding me. Councillor Fletcher, please. Veronica Fletcher. Sorry, Veronica.
I'm sitting here. Well, I'm not going to get up so strong, Chairman.
Well, you can do it from there if you want to, Veronica.
No, I can't, because I
Okay.
speak to the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The planning officer and all officers have worked hard to bring this application before you. A Grade 2 listed building that had fallen into disrepair, other outbuildings and difficult terrain, with many trees and vegetation. Accessed by a narrow lane with 2 businesses off the entrance to the right, and those 2 businesses are one of the vital parts and hubs of Priorslee. I am pleased to see the farmhouse and barn have been brought back into use and that my comments have been considered, especially the installation of electric vehicle charging points and eco-gain, no net biodiversity loss, conditions for management of the landscape and habitats created, e.g. wildflower area and 2 wildlife ponds and bat boxes, etc. 79 trees are to be planted in mitigation of the loss of 29 trees and group hedges. The officer has saved the sycamore tree at the entrance of the lane and also the oak tree, so I paid tribute as well to the tree officer. I ask that the following points are considered during your determination. 1. Traffic management plan. 2. Construction plan. These need to be in place before permission is granted. Please see page 22, paragraph 17-18 to prevent disruption to the businesses during the construction of the sewer system in Woodhouse Lane to connect the main sewer in Salisbury Avenue. 2. The construction traffic, the plan will need to detail access arrangements to the existing businesses and must be in place before permission is granted to make those businesses viable during the construction. Further, it states that the applicant will need to collaborate with Miller Homes, who are building on an adjacent land. I would point out there are notices on the entrance to Woodhouse Lane at the moment giving directions to Miller Homes car park. No telephone number. Please would the officer clarify, as Miller Homes have created a road access of Castle Farm Way with regard to their construction plan, with a 4-way junction to include access to Red Road development. And I cannot see this access is granted in Miller Homes construction plan. Page 28, para 714 section 106 agreement. This details monies for both the primary education and secondary education within 3 miles. However, I ask that this money be applied in light of the 106 agreement policy, that the monies be applied within the Priorslee attendance area, as currently defined for both the primary schools and secondary schools. And I ask that all these conditions are complied with before planning permission is given, especially with the deception access to the businesses off Woodhouse Lane. And it will place the business in an enviable position if they're not able to function properly. Therefore, I am able to support the application on those conditions, please, and look forward to see the restoration of the farmhouse and barn and the diversity plan put in place. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Veronica. Mr. Rob Perrins, please, the applicant's agent.
members of the public to speak. They're registered. You're registered, aren't you?
It's for a different project, though, isn't it?
Oh, sorry. You're not registered to speak on that one. So sorry about that.
No, not on my list anyway, Veronica.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay.
They're not registered to speak on this one. Thank you.
Rob Perrins.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. Firstly, may I take the opportunity to thank you for the opportunity to address this evening's meeting. My name is Rob Perrins and I'm the Technical Director for Shropshire Homes Limited. I would also like to thank Council Officers and Councillor Veronica Fletcher for their input into our development proposals. There have been a number of matters that have been discussed with them through the application process in order for us to arrive at the current scheme before you this evening. As was discussed at length, it was important to ensure the proposals were compliant with the standards set by highway officers and respected the presence of several retained trees. Each of these requirements have been met, whilst at the same time ensuring the future highway is safe for all users, particularly cyclists, as a national cycle route lies along the route of the access road, and pedestrians. Currently, cyclists and pedestrians share the same surface. Our access will improve matters by introducing dedicated footways adjoining the access road which aren't now present. This provides a much more safer route overall than currently in place and will ensure connectivity between our site and the surrounding areas, including the immediately adjacent land which is currently being developed for housing. We have liaised with the manager of the garden centre about construction access to ensure that the construction work required to develop the scheme will not adversely affect their operations. The manager of the garden centre met with our construction director and has confirmed that he is happy with our proposals, and we are happy to continue discussions and provide a traffic management plan. We have undertaken detailed inspections of the existing trees. You will note from the planning officer's report that any important trees are being retained. Our landscape scheme also reflects discussions with Councillor Fletcher, and we are incorporating an area of wildflower into the design. The long-term maintenance of the landscaped areas and trees will be secured by a management company that residents will contribute towards the cost of. We've assessed the requirement for biodiversity, and officers confirm they are satisfied regarding this. We also highlight our application includes provision for electric car charging points, although this is not currently a planning policy requirement. All ecological issues have been assessed and agreed with your officers. We have entered into a district newt licence to ensure adequate measures are in place for the duration of the development and beyond. A major benefit of our proposals is the renovation and conversion of the existing listed farmhouse and barn into dwellings that will ensure the future of these buildings. The former commercial units have been replaced with high quality family homes that are in keeping with the setting of the site and the listed building. The scheme will provide 21 homes, including 5 affordable homes, in accordance with planning policy. As well as providing high quality family homes, the scheme brings financial benefits through Section 106 contributions for education, sports facility and play recreation, totalling £131,154. Drainage proposals for the site are accepted and will utilise the existing pond that will also be enhanced as part of the landscape scheme and provide an attractive focal point for the long term. There are no technical objections to the application. We have worked very closely with your officers and humbly request members view our proposals favourably and vote in accordance with your officer's recommendations to grant authority to officers to grant permission subject to completion of a Section 106 agreement and associated conditions. And thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Ian, you're back on.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just, probably what I'll do is just come back to the points Councillor Fletcher kindly raised. Just in terms of the construction management plan, that will be a condition, and I'll have a specific reference in there to ensuring that the access to the adjacent garden centre and farm shop is maintained where possible throughout the works. And appreciate what Mr. Perrins has said about they've already had those conversations, which we've encouraged through the application with that service next to their site. So, but that is a pre-commencement condition as well. So we'll seek that information prior to the start of works. In terms of the monies towards schools, obviously rely on the council's education officers in that respect. We can have dialogue with them over where that money is spent locally.
Yeah, it's just essentially we, as part of the consultation, will engage with the education team, so they will come up with a proposed figure of monies in line with policy for those contributions. As part of that, they will kind of suggest an area for that monies to be spent. What we need to kind of make sure is that there is a need for the within those kind of educational facilities, and for that money to be spent appropriately to meet the demand from the development itself. So what we need to kind of ensure is that it's kind of tight enough that money will be appropriately spent. So we would want to have that further dialogue with those with the relevant officers to ensure that I think it was a 3 mile radius. Yeah. Is kind of appropriate to kind of meet those needs appropriately. But we can kind of raise with them kind of the concerns and issues identified, and kind of ensure that it is appropriately spent.
So there are 2 recommendations in Chair on this one, both recommended for approval for the full and the LBC, subject to conditions and Section 106 agreement.
For debate, Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, Chairman. I've had a very close look at this and all the documentation on the website, and listened to the submissions from the officers, the councillor and the representative from the applicant, and I have a few comments to make about the recommendation. I understand as when an item comes to the planning committee here, we take a decision whether to grant or not. The recommendation is to grant it, but then leave all the details to the delivery service manager on how to the conditions and everything. And I think that perhaps is a little bit too lax in my mind, because the delivery manager can then negotiate conditions covering an application which maybe members won't agree with, or even later on, with changing circumstances, change the conditions. As I've found out today that one of the major applications in the ward, the drainage conditions and where it connects to the main sewers, has now been completely changed and could possibly affect people and businesses within the ward, which is concerning to me. Looking at the recommendation, I have some more detailed. The section 106 for the primary school education and the secondary school education, it says within a 3 mile radius. However, primary education and secondary education within Telford and Wrekin has designated attendance zones for primary schools and for secondary schools. Recently, I think it was October or November last year, this year, that they designated the latest attendance zones. And if you're in the attendance zones, you can go to your school, either primary or secondary. If you're not in the attendance zone, then you can't go to the schools. We found this when we moved in here 32 years ago. There was a school quarter a mile away from us, but we couldn't go there because we weren't in the attendance zone. If this money goes onto the 3 mile radius as requested, it could go outside of the attendance zones for the primary schools in Prisley and the secondary schools. And I noticed that on the other application on the site where there's monies for primary and secondary, the primary one is in a lot lower, is only 2 miles, and the secondary is going to a specific school. And I think we should have something similar in this one. So, following on the recommendation from Councillor Fletcher, I feel that the wording for the primary school education works should be amended to primary school education works within the designated attendance area for primary schools in Priorsley, because that will cover the 2 schools which are having work done on them, and then third school which will be coming on sale within the next 2 or 3 years to feed the extra thousands of houses that are being built in the area and will need a primary school. And the secondary one should be directed to Holy Trinity Academy, because they have plans in place which will be coming to us in shortly to extend the school from 900 to 300 pupils, and they will need the money for that extension. Therefore, rather than sending it on a 3-mile radius, which takes it way out of Priorsley and out of the attendance areas, those amendments I feel should be applied. And then looking at the conditions, it says highway conditions outlined, drainage conditions and ecology conditions, and the protection according to the agricultural method statement. I feel that those statements need to be qualified to take into account the conditions outlined in the report by the officer, i.e. for highway conditions outlined should be highways conditions outlined in paragraphs 5.11 and 5.13. Drainage conditions outlined should be drainage conditions outlined in paragraph 5.14. Ecology conditions outlined in 5.15, and the tree protection under conditions outlined in 5.16. And I'm glad that the officer says a condition, the construction management plan, that needs adding to the recommendation also. So I'd like to propose those amendments to the conditions, and I call on members here to support me. Thank you, Chairman.
Just Val?
Chair, if I can just address the issues around the section 106, please. In terms of how we request monies, it must meet the tests of the section 106 test that is set out in legislation, which is clear that it must meet the needs of the development. So any needs that arise in terms of education-wise, that needs to be captured. We then have a policy as well, which is adopted by the council in terms of how education contributions are requested, and again that's been considered and adopted by Cabinet. Recognising your requests in terms of being specific for it, what I don't want to do is hinder the section 106 monies so that it can't be spent within the triggered time frame, and that the monies has to be returned to the developer. So I would rather go with our existing education requests in terms of that 3 miles, so that we can ensure that it can be spent and it does meet the needs of the education needs that arise from this development.
May I respond, Chairman? I respect the view of the officer, but what concerns me, that if we continue with the 3 mile radius, that means the money could be spent outside the designated attendance areas for both primary schools and secondary schools in Priorsley, which means the money will be spent up to 3 miles away from the site, which means it will have no benefit arising for the pupils in the area, because they will not be able to access those schools. That's why I'm proposing that amendment. And I would point out on the application that I did not sit on, the section 106 education monies, is one of them is for the secondary school, is specifically for a specific secondary school. So I'm following that with the one for HTA, and for the primary one, it has a lower radius of 2 miles. So why do they get a different from one recommendation to this recommendation? I'm trying to bring it more in line, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Ian. When we get to the, we'll see in a second. Any further comments from the committee? No?
Well, I'd just say that it was good that we've got a construction plan in place. I mean, I went this morning and a chap came to me and said, "Who are you? 'Cause what are you going to do about this?" And they were putting Harris fencing around the entrance. And I did referring to Councillor Fletcher and Fletcher in actual fact. But they're very concerned around that area, the businesses, that, you know, the construction work on this will impede on them. So it's really good to know that you've got that wrapped up. So thank you for that. Other than that, I've got no issues with it. Thank you.
Do you want to come back on what's been said?
Yeah, there was a point that Councillor Veronica Fletcher made just in terms of the Miller site next door. I am aware, as the case officer dealing with that site as well, that signage has gone up in that location. They are using Woodhouse Lane. We haven't yet approved the site management plan that includes that. There may be some requirement for them to have some access down that part of the lane while they carry out the construction works, but we're still dealing with that with them. So,
Chairman, I'm sorry, but there is a traffic regulation order closing access on that section of Woodhouse, of the National Route 81 leading from Woodhouse Way down to the site. This was implemented in July of 2021 and lasts for 12 months. If vehicles are using it illegally, I have reported it to traffic management and I'm waiting for them to take the appropriate action.
We're aware of that. Actually, it's something I'm working on as well with the highways team.
One of the vehicles when I was there today nearly ran me over. And they're also dumping rubbish in the lane.
Okay. I'm closely monitoring that with both Miller Homes and our highways team to try and sort out those issues. Okay. And that's
right. Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Dugmore. I was just about to move to Councillor Fletcher's amendment, actually, unless you want to come up with something completely different.
Well, I've got some different bits. As I say, I quite like this development. I welcome the charging points and the parking and everything. I'm glad about the construction management plan because I got that down here with protecting the businesses. I mean, the cycle route is being preserved, isn't it? That's one question. And then on the and then just coming back to the 106 monies, the enhancement of sports facilities in the locality of the development. I mean, surely if there's going, you know, can we not put in within a 1 mile radius of the development to make sure that the money is spent so that to the benefit of the people who are going to live on the development? And just coming back to Councillor Fletcher's point about trying to make sure that the school money is spent to the benefit of the residents. Well, then, if there's an issue with the money not having to be returned or not being spent, well, then why don't we put a time limit on that and make sure that it's that as well as it being spent within the school catchment area, it will also be valid for, I don't know, 5-10 years, whatever it normally is.
3 years.
Time limits that's set within the actual Section 106 requirements as well. That's always 5 years. It must be spent within 5 years. So what that's my reasoning as well, though, is I don't want it to be so restrictive that you end up with it not being able to accommodate the children, the needs that arise from this. in a similar way.
Yeah. Sorry, Chair, but the extension of Holy Trinity is going to take place in less than 5 years' time, or else we're going to have a real school places crisis, and ditto for the primary school. So I mean, I think there's no problem with the money not being spent within 5 years in this particular situation. Therefore, it should be.
In terms of the monies are already found for that extension in terms of HDA, so this is an addition in terms of the needs that arise for this development specifically.
I think that application for extending the school has not come before this committee yet, so you can't discuss it.
Well, no, but something's going to have to happen, or else you're going to have no places for kids to go.
But let's cross that bridge when we get to it.
Okay. So what about the sports facilities then?
Sports facilities. I mean, that could be a more strategic approach on sports facilities across the borough, rather than it being. It's looking at where you could spend it on sports locally. And obviously, there's two contributions. There's one for sort of play and open space, and one for sports as well. And that's come from the recommendation from our Healthy Spaces officer. So it could be a more strategic approach to that rather than anywhere locally.
Not very good with it.
Yes, Janice.
Can I just say, the issues that have been raised, or the concerns that have been raised, surely they can be monitored, and if they're not sticking to as it should be in this document, it could be brought back to planning. I believe we have done that in the past.
Sorry, Councillor Jones, in terms of which regard, in terms of when they're carrying it out?
Yeah, the things that have been, the issues that have been raised, surely we can divvy that through our planning committee, and the changes that have been suggested, or not changes, but surely it could be monitored, is what I'm saying.
In terms of the recommendation that's set before you this evening is asking you to delegate authority to myself to deal with the matters in terms of what's in section 106 and with those conditions that are also highlighted, and then if there's any other conditions as well that you wanted to add on to that, and then we would deal with it. We wouldn't then report it back to you.
No,
if you wanted
only if it wasn't being adhered to, if you know what I mean.
So without delegating authority to myself, you would rather just, in terms of set it out, align and approve all.
If we accept what's in this document now as it is,
yeah.
Who will monitor it, I think, is what I'm asking. How will it be monitored?
That will be from myself and within the team. So in terms of then things like the section 106 contributions, making sure they're appropriately spent, we hold section 106 budgets, and we do release them to even other internal areas unless we see that it's appropriately meeting with section 106 terms.
And it could be chased up if you feel it's...
And we do chase them up, yes. Your planning authority does that for you, and we ensure that everything meets the required regulations set out in legislation right through to the decision notice and the terms of that section 106 agreement. And then we follow these things up in terms of if there are any breaches of conditions or breaches of section 106, then we are actively working on that and will take the appropriate action if needed.
Okay. Well, Councillor Ian Fletcher has moved an amendment to paragraph 9.1, that's the recommendation. 9.1, paragraph 1 is the suggesting an amendment to that. Okay, is there a seconder for that amendment? Proposed amendment?
We're absolutely clear about that.
What's the amendment? Sorry.
Councillor Fletcher, can you reiterate your amendment? I understand it's to do with the 106 monies, and also that the education money should be spent within the catchment area.
Yeah, in paragraph 1, the next to the last line, I propose it should read £65,382 primary school education works within the attendance area for primary primary schools. That covers the 2 schools that there and the 3rd one, which will be coming on within about 2 or 3 years, because they're building the houses to qualify for it to come in very quickly. And they'll need it because of all the houses, all right? That's one. And then the last line, the £44,972 secondary education works at Holy Trinity Academy.
Okay. Those are your proposed amendments.
Those are my proposed amendments to that paragraph, yes.
And I assume Nigel Dugmore, when he said he seconded those, that amendment.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
The amendment is before us. All those in favour of the amendment, please show. 1, 2, 3. All those against? 4, 5, 6.
Mr. Chairman, the 3 mile radius is the standard thing which we carried on.
Okay, we've had the
okay, yeah.
Councillor Sauter. Okay, the recommendation now is before somebody move the recommendation as a whole.
I'll move the recommendation.
Seconded.
Chairman, what about adding on the word construction management planning conditions, because it isn't there on the printed thing?
Which one's that, Councillor Fletcher?
In paragraph, in following conditions,
yes.
limit, heritage, samples, materials, etc., they don't have construction management plan. And I did propose amendments adding the actual paragraph numbers in the report to conditions 6, 7, 8 and 9.
In terms of the inclusion of the construction management plan, that's absolutely fine. That's happy for that to be added. In terms of the paragraph references relating to the highways and the drainage and such like, we're able to kind of include those paragraphs kind of for minute purposes, I suppose. But when we would be preparing the decision notice, in any case, they would refer to those conditions that are referenced within those paragraphs in any case.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that everything
Absolutely.
is covered.
Yeah.
Okay. The recommendation there is for us, subject to the amendments that the officer just outlined. All those in favour, please show. Any against? No, it's unanimous. Okay. We now come to the listed building part of that, which is on page 45, paragraph 2.1. Moved it. Seconded. All agreed?
Yeah.
Thank you. Different recommendation. This is building on that. Okay. We now come to the final one for this evening. It's number 30, Highgrove Meadows, and it's 2021-0822.
Thank you, Chair. As this is a full planning application for a first floor front extension, installation of a second floor rear dormer and single storey ground floor rear extension. Retrospective planning permission is sought for the rear extension. The site subject to this application is located on Highgrove Meadows within Briersley. The property is located on a corner plot and comprises a detached 4-bed property. The application originally comprised of a first floor extension, second floor dormer only. However, during the determination period, the local planning authority identified that the completed ground floor rear extension did not benefit from permitted development, and therefore the application was modified to include this as part of it. Since the preparation of the report, no additional representations raising new issues have been received. Thank you, Chair.
I have speakers on this one. Councillor Veronica Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The application has 2 parts. Retrospective planning permission for ground floor extension erected without consent of the planning authority, erection of first floor front extension and installation of second floor rear dormer. The erection of this large extension over 4 metres out from the back of the building and stretching across the full width of the building without planning permission caused 9 months of misery to neighbours during lockdown between December and August 2021. It impeded the neighbours from enjoying the amenity of their gardens and homes and those from working from home. The noise, pollution, disruption and disturbance was right across the area and was extremely excessive and conducted without consideration for neighbours. Even when requested to turn down the radio, the volume was increased. Installation of the second floor dormer with 4 windows at the rear, of which 3 will be transparent glass, will look directly over the houses and gardens. This means that the neighbours will have no privacy whilst using their gardens, so destroying their residential amenity. Furthermore, the application proposes to clad the dormer windows with wood cladding. This completely not in keeping with the surrounding area and introduces a fire risk to inhabitants. The report does contain comment from the Fire Authority, guidance for domestic use. But about the dangers, there's no report in for you to see about the dangers of wood cladding, which I ask you to consider. As the building is also increased from 2 stories to 3 stories. The extension over the front ground floor building will block natural light to the bathroom window of number 28 and will overshadow the footpath alongside. This is important and should be given full weight as to the detrimental effect on number 28 and will require the owners of number 28 to use additional electricity for lighting continually at considerable cost, and of course this increased use will contribute to global warming. The application before you is clearly an overdevelopment of the property and site, an increase from 4 to 5 bedrooms and adding a further storey to the property. More car spaces will be needed, which cannot be accommodated easily on the site. So on-street parking, creating congestion problems, will take place, especially as this is on a corner. The entire site, including the size of the ground floor extension, takes up more than 3/4 of the plot. Therefore, the amenity space is severely reduced. The proposed development is out of proportion to all neighbourhood properties and will dominate the area. I request refusal of the application on the grounds of overdevelopment, loss of light, overshadowing, loss of privacy and layout on appearance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. Eric and Emma Woodhouse. We normally only have one speaker, but if you want to share the time, you can do. Oh.
Okay, so my name's Eric Woodhouse and I live at 28 Highgrove Meadows, which is the next door neighbour to this development. We've just got a few concerns. We don't want the thing to go ahead, obviously. It's as Veronica said, really, the second storey development will overshadow our house, causing loss of light to the side window. It will also block the sunlight falling on our garden from between the houses, which we enjoy in the morning. The dormer development will overshadow the rear garden, reducing the natural sunlight falling on that. It will also compromise the privacy for us and other neighbours. The plans will overdevelop the site, increasing the density of the plot and affecting the visual appearance, which will no longer be in character with the area or the estate. A really big concern of us is this kitchen extension that went on for 9 months last year, or rather this year. It caused 9 months of unnecessary noise, dust and disturbance and was endured by and affected many of the neighbourhood. No consideration was given to neighbours or their children who were confined to their home due to COVID. Constant noise, fumes, vibration, foul language, music, shouting and abuse from the contractors made it impossible for my wife to work from home, which she does regularly. On several occasions this was so bad that this caused us to vacate our home office to work from our parents' or friends' houses. The noise and disturbance often occurred at unreasonable times of the day and included weekends. The access point to the site is on a corner of a residential development. There is no parking for site or delivery on the site for delivery or parking of workmen's vehicles. Previously this caused dangerous congestion in the area, forcing pedestrians off the footpath. Materials were placed in the highway and on the footpath for long periods, and there was a conflict where vehicles had blocked access to other residents getting to and from their homes. The contractors were reluctant to move their vehicles despite causing an obstruction and were aggressively unreasonable to anyone who challenged their actions. The new plans represent a bigger project which has the potential to cause even more distress to the residents of the estate. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. The site lies within Telford urban boundary where the principle of development is supported. The main considerations for this application are the impact upon residential amenity of neighbouring properties and the design of the development. In terms of amenity, the first floor extension would face the road, and so there's unlikely to be significant loss of privacy to neighbouring properties given the existing separation distances. Whilst the first floor dormer would reduce the amount of light to the immediate neighbour's bathroom window, bathrooms are not considered to be habitable rooms that are given daylight protection, and therefore limited weight can be applied. In terms of design, the local planning authority has taken into consideration the permitted development rights covering extensions to dwellings. The proportions of the second floor dormer are in line with what could be constructed under permitted development, and as such the applicant does not require planning permission for a dormer extension of the proportions proposed. However, planning permission is required for the stained timber cladding being proposed, as it's a material. It is not a material used in the construction of the existing property. Therefore, in terms of the appearance of the dormer window, members are being asked to consider only whether the material proposed is appropriate. The single-storey rear extension has been built in similar brick to the existing property, and permission is sought retrospectively for this. The rear extension does not adversely affect the amenity of the host dwelling or that of neighbouring properties, and its design is considered acceptable. When assessing the cumulative impact of the proposals, the local planning authority consider that the extensions do not constitute overdevelopment of the site, as they can be adequately accommodated within the site boundary. Objections have been received regarding disturbance caused to residents during the construction of the rear extension. In the current instance, noting the concerns and the issues caused during the construction, the applicant has agreed, in the interest of good neighbourly relations, to accept a condition requiring the submission of a construction management plan to protect public amenity for the remainder of the work should permission be granted. Again, the construction management plan would be proportionate to the development proposed. So to conclude, officers consider that the proposal is compliant with policy BE1 and BE2 of the local plan, and the recommendation remains as per the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Go to the committee. Councillor Scott.
I want to say that I would like to have seen the applicant come along and speak in favour as well. It seems strange that he didn't. Just one question, actually. If this was to be refused, what would happen to the single-storey ground floor rear extension?
In terms of the rear extension, it would kind of come down to considering the expediency of enforcement action in that case. In terms of the rear extension itself and why permission was required for that, the extension as built is 4.05 metres, so it's 5 centimetres deeper than what could be implemented under permitted development. Alongside that, another reason for requiring it is there was a bay window to the rear of the property, and because of the form of bay windows, they kind of it almost creates a new side extension to the bay window. So, and there's greater regulations in terms of what you can do under permitted development, whether with bay windows, because of that side elevation protruding, different to kind of the typical flank elevation. So the actual depth of the extension is very minimal in terms of how far it exceeds what could typically be permitted, and in this case it's kind of caught primarily because of that bay window.
So it would remain even if this was with you?
As a local authority, we would need to consider, bearing in mind those kind of constraints, whether it would be appropriate in the current instance to take enforcement action.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Right. Yeah, I think most of us take a bit of dim view of retrospective planning permission, and really, you know, sort of when you realise that you should have just put a separate application in just to do the ground floor one. But anyway, he hasn't. So, I mean, you know, very kind that the applicant will actually accept a construction management plan. Well, I don't care whether or not he does accept it. He should be having one anyway. I mean, what hours are proposed for this construction management plan?
In terms of, we haven't had that dialogue in terms of the hours of construction. Typically, it would kind of conform to kind of similar hours that we would impose on a normal kind of residential development. So, whether that be it would be limiting it to around kind of 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, up until
8 till 6, Monday to Friday.
Yep, and then again Saturday
8 till 12 on a Saturday.
And not at Sundays or kind of bank holidays as well. So we'd be limiting it to kind of those typical hours elsewhere within the borough.
Okay, and then coming on to materials, I mean, you know my views on cladding, which goes back quite a long way, and you know, sort of, I do have concerns over the design of this because it completely changes the frontage of the property, and I disagree that it's in keeping with the other properties in the area, because it's not at all. It looks completely different.
In terms of the dormer with the timber cladding, that's proposed to the rear of the property, so it's within the rear roof plane. Okay, acknowledging that the property is kind of that corner position, it isn't as kind of fronting the street as it otherwise could be.
However, it's far more prominent than if it was at the end of a cul-de-sac. You know, it is quite a prominent property.
In terms of timber cladding as well, as a material or cladding on buildings, appreciating that it's maybe not a common feature within the street scene of this kind of part of the borough, it is used as a common material for external cladding to properties elsewhere. So I think in terms of any concerns regarding the safety of it as a material, it is a tried, tested product used in construction elsewhere within the borough.
Oh, yeah. And if it's not treated on a regular basis, it looks bloody awful, as we've seen in various different places across the borough. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Fletcher, you want to come back?
Yes, certainly, Chair. Again, I've had a look at this one, and I've been round the area and had a look at the site itself. And in fact, since we lived in Prisley for over 30, 32, 33, 34 years, we actually saw this development being built. They are very nice, on the whole, detached houses, 3 or 4 bedrooms. This one is situated on a corner. So when you go and look at it, one, you can see the illegal extension on the ground floor from the road, and you're talking about the dormer extension on the roof, the wood cladding, that is clearly going to be visible from the highway. There's no two ways about it. And also from the gardens of 28, 32 and round, forget the numbers, round in Highgrove Meadows. And the design and the structure is going to be totally out of keeping with the existing design of the entire developments. But I mean, we do like modern things. At one time we approved a horrible modern house in the Ironbridge Gorge, so it's just been done. With regard to the front extension, because of the profile of the land, which slopes down and away to the south of the site, the houses across from the place, looking at the plans, I think it's 49, 48, 49 and 51 will be entirely overlooked by the front extension. No two ways about it. They'll be able to see directly into their windows, so they will lose their any semblance of amenity use from not only the bedroom windows and in the front room windows. Next door is going to be completely overshadowed, number 28. I think it looks like the new policy is that you can build anything in a garden. You don't. There doesn't seem to be anything against it. I should remember that when I put my application in. But I think this is entirely. It's going to be an eyesore. The wood cladding, I have concerns about. I'm worried about on being maintained, in that it could be a fire risk, and we don't want anything resembling a fire in Grenfell type disaster in this area of Telford. And you mentioned about the construction management plan, the normal working hours. I'm sorry, but Highgrove Meadows is on the main road, Gatcombe Way. Every morning and every evening it is highly used by the school run and the buses going down Gatcombe Way. Therefore, I would strongly recommend that any construction management plan is restricted to times outside the normal school run line. So we're talking from 9:30 to 2:30 only, because before 9:30 you've got the school run as well as the buses going down up there, and the traffic is atrocious. And after 2:30 there's all the traffic as well for the school run and the nurseries. And don't forget, we've already approved off Gatcombe Way the Lovell's 250 odd houses, or is it 350? And then there's the Miller Homes coming in, which is going to have the bus route going through. Then there's the paddocks off Gatcombe Way with another 94 houses that are being constructed. The traffic down there in the mornings and evenings is absolutely atrocious. Like most of Priory, it's becoming gridlocked because of the houses that are there and people going to and from school. There, and we have, and of course there's all the construction lorries down for Red Row, Miller, Hubbles. This is going to be another construction job, and having big vans coming in and out, and there is no parking around there for these vehicles to wait. If they wait, they are going to be blocking the roads, which I don't think. So if we can have a construction plan which limits access to the non-school times, will be appreciated. Thank you, Chairman.
Mark, can I come back?
In terms of the construction management plan, it has to be acknowledged this is quite modest extensions to a domestic property. Probably the most significant development itself was the single-storey rear extension, which has for the most part been implemented. So the actual number of contractors' vehicles and site deliveries for this development would be quite limited. The site has parking for three, or sufficient space for three vehicles to the frontage, and I would expect, as part of a construction management plan in any case, that details that at least deliveries of materials and some contract parking could be provided on site. The site itself is kind of at the, not at the end of a cul-de-sac, but at the end of an existing road which serves around about 12 properties or so. So in terms of the amount of vehicles that are passing the site, in any case, it would be more limited. So I would hope that there wouldn't be the kind of possible highway issues and that you kind of raise, Councillor Fletcher. And in terms of the construction management plan and the hours that you suggest, working outside kind of the school hours, that would be significantly reducing the operational times for construction to take place on the property, and in turn that would extend the construction period by possibly a number of weeks as well. So having that kind of full range of hours from kind of 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning until early evening would enable construction to take place quickly and efficiently and effectively without causing the perceived highway problems.
Thank you, Mark. Any other comments? Councillor Fletcher, Scott? Or Councillor Dugmore?
Remember me. Right, is it normal to have bedrooms without any access to any bathrooms? Because there isn't a bathroom on the middle floor in the proposal. Because you've got an ensuite in the principal bedroom, and you've got an ensuite for bedroom 4, but there's no bathroom for bedroom 2 or bedroom 3. And the original bathroom has been converted into a staircase to go to the second floor. I thought there were rules about bathrooms and things like that.
In terms of the kind of accessibility to those rooms, that would also be a matter for building regulations. But in terms of access to those rooms, I believe that primarily relates to houses of multiple occupation rather than domestic dwellings themselves.
So we're being asked to approve plans to have a 5-bedroom or however many bedroom house, and 2 of the bedrooms have no bathroom, and they don't even have access to a bathroom because they've got they'd have to use the en-suites of the other 2 bedrooms, or they'd have to go upstairs and use the en-suite on the second floor, or they'd have to go downstairs and use the WC.
In terms of the
kitchen, that doesn't make sense at all. That's ridiculous.
In terms of the layout for the second floor, the bathroom on that floor is not identified as an ensuite. It is labelled as a bathroom, and there's
page 107 on the proposal, because it says ensuite on bedroom 4, and it says ensuite for principal bedroom, but there's nothing for bedroom 3, and there's nothing for bedroom 2, because where the original bathroom was is now a staircase.
You have to go upstairs and use the bathroom on the next floor.
But in terms of the second floor, so the rooms within kind of the roof, that does identify a bathroom at that level. So you have bedroom 5 to one side of the property, And then on the other side of the staircase and a series of cupboards, there is a bathroom.
Mad. Absolutely mad. Well, it's to be they're all related, isn't it?
Having concerns that bedrooms haven't got en suites. You know, on Woodside you've got one bathroom in your house, you don't have en suites. So I don't really understand why that's an issue. Like, if you've got 2 en suites in your house, you're doing well, I think. I just don't get that as a problem. But maybe that's just where I live, I'm not sure.
We've been asked to consider the planning application, not the building regulations on this. And building regs are allied to planning, but they look after the internal parts of it like that. Okay, any other comments? No comments? Okay, well, the application is before us. Somebody want to move the recommendation or otherwise?
I'll move it.
You move the recommendation. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded, right, Raj. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against? 3 against. Okay. That is allowed, subject to the conditions which are there. Okay, that brings us to the end of the meeting. But can I inform the committee that there's a meeting next week in this same venue, same time, 5:30, and there are some important items on the agenda that it may take a bit longer next time.
So can we have some lighting and some heating?